Hello, everyone. My name is Bogdan. I'm a regional leader with Intuit Canada here in the West. Wanted to welcome everybody to Accounting in 2025, a conversation about a changing industry. Very excited to have three people at the top of their field join us today. I'll just go through a quick bit of introductions on them, and then we'll have them share a little about themselves. So first on the panel, we have Martha Banner. She's the National Manager and Cloud Practice Development at Grant Thornton LLP. Second, we have David BurkeSteen, CPA, panelist, and change agent, as well as innovation catalyst for Intuit, our accounting group. And third, we have Bridget Noonan, CPA, Director of Clearline, as well as a co-founder of Clearline Consulting. And what we'll do now is we'll just have each person give us a quick introduction on themselves, and we'll begin with Martha.
Thanks, Bogdan. I'm Martha Banner. I'm a CPA and the Cloud Practice Development lead at Grant Thornton LLP. I've been in the cloud space since 2015, so about 5 years, and I'm super excited about our topic today about what the future of our industry is going to look like 5 years from where we are now. Thank you.
Perfect. David.
Thank you. My name is Dave BurkeSteen. I am a CPA, CITP, Certified IT Professional, CGMA, and I've been in the cloud space. I was thinking about it a real long time when I worked for a small company out of Ottawa called Bell Canada, and they introduced something called iNet, which was really the first teletypes of sending messages for phone companies way back when. I enjoy traveling around the country, helping CPA firms implement cloud accounting. I'm a college professor, and glad to be here. Thank you, Bogdan.
Thank you, Dave. And Bridget.
Great. Thank you, Bogdan. Yeah, my name is Bridget Noonan. I'm a partner at Clearline CPA. It's a 40-person accounting firm here in Vancouver in the Lower Mainland. I'm the lead in the not-for-profit sector, as well as the lead for Clearline Consulting, where we provide training and consulting services to small and mid-sized firms all throughout Western Canada. So I'm excited to be discussing the cloud and QBO in particular as it relates directly to practice management and running the internal side of the firm.
Perfect. Thank you, Bridget. So we'll get started with our first question here. And before we look too far in the future, I think it's important that we reflect on something that everybody's been going through lately, specifically around the COVID situation. So I just wanted to go around and ask, what has this situation had? What impact has it had on the accounting industry? And are we going to see a new normal based on how people have been working over the past 6 to 8 weeks? And we'll start with you, Martha.
Great question, Bogdan. There's two places of impact that I'm going to talk about. So one is on the colleague side of our cloud practitioners, and the other is on the client side. Thankfully, being part of our cloud accounting services group, the majority of our practitioners were already in the cloud space. And so it was quite easy for us to make the transition to work from home because we'd already been on this journey of converting over our work into these systems. When it comes to our clients, it's been very interesting. Some are thriving, some are just surviving, which has presented new challenges for us to navigate in different advisory services than we've ever offered in the past. And to a degree that I don't think we really even know what the true impact is at this point in time. For those clients who are surviving, it's been cash flow analysis and helping them mitigate some of that risk there. And for those who are thriving in this space, we're seeing them grow because they already have a business model that is successful in a work from home environment. And what I hope to see in the future is the adoption of cloud so that all businesses can start to thrive in a work from home or more digital landscape. which is going to be the future coming forward.
Perfect. Thanks, Martha. Dave, how about you? What are your thoughts?
Martha's saying, but I'm seeing a lot of different angles here. I just spent time talking to a top 100 CPA firm and a couple of small practitioners. The top 100 firm said their business is growing by leaps and bounds because they were already in the cloud. And the solo practitioners that I'm speaking to that have been in the cloud are seeing their businesses thrive. They're doing more and more advisory services, whether it's the PPP or the getting the clients loans. They're entering more of the advisory space. I think that's going to change accounting firms to do more advisory service as they go forward. Firms that are hooking up the technology to work remotely are seeing their staff adapt a whole new way of doing work. Actually, one of the firms I spoke to said something which was kind of interesting, that the older folks are adapting more to working at home than the younger folks. And I see that with my daughter and her husband. They have 2 kids at home, and they got 2 adults working from home, 2 children trying to do homeschooling. So this is changing the way things are going far beyond whatever we saw in the past. I believe that accounting will change forever based on this disaster. Pandemics and disasters change what people do. And I see that happening in the future here.
Perfect. Thank you, David. Bridget, what are your thoughts?
We have firms that went from no remote type access to being fully capable for remote access within a week. And firms that never anticipated allowing a work from home environment to become the new norm. All of a sudden we're forced into it. And I think a lot of them are starting to see some of the benefits that can be gained from a work from home type of environment. But you can also see where the struggles are going to come in. And if you're thinking about a practice management point of view, outside of trying to train clients to deal with you on a more remote basis, doing the work from home hasn't proved to be challenging. We're all very fortunate that we're accountants and gainfully employed and able to continue to work through this pandemic. But what we are seeing is some real struggles around training and staff engagement and getting that feedback to people, irregardless of the numerous Zoom calls and conference calls that are happening every day. So I definitely have some concern, not so much with my professional staff, but with CPA students coming in the future and what that's going to look like for firms.
Perfect. Thank you. If there's no other thoughts on the matter, we'll jump into the next question. And I'm glad that everybody touched on staffing because that seems to be a big concern, as well as potentially an opportunity down the line with some companies promoting work at home. They're saying if anybody wants to stay that way, they can do so. Some companies are starting to allow staff to come into their offices in smaller runs. So it's interesting to see how people are going back to work. But thinking now a little bit more into the future and with the lens, of course, on what's happened with COVID, how do you think we're going to see a shift in the team composition, the remote work, and how can firms better prepare themselves to this changing demand for having staff working remote? We'll start with you, Martha.
Yeah, so flexibility is going to be key for firms. And by flexibility, I mean that you don't have to go to a 100% remote workforce. That's by no means what this needs to lead to. But it can lead to a combination of the two, working in the office, not working in the office at all, or part-time in the office and part-time home. And we're going to see staff who are going to be requesting that type of flexibility in their work going forward. There's a big conscious decision that also has to be made in order to maintain firm culture at that time too. And when you are just on a 100% remote workforce, it's very hard to maintain the culture because you're not having that personal interaction with your colleagues or even with your clients. And so there's got to be some anchoring down and a watering hole of sorts so that that type of communication can still happen on a frequent basis and an informal basis, because at least for us at Grant Thornton, culture is absolutely a key benefit to our workforce and the way we work. And so for those who are considering a 100% work from home model, having the consideration around how do you continue to maintain or even create a culture is super important. The other piece that also needs to be well thought out, and Bridget brought that up in her intro to the last question, and it was around training. And so do we have the robust process, robust training that we can actually have our colleagues thrive while they're at home, or do we still have to build that out? And a lot of thought has to be brought into that space in order to make sure that those colleagues who are joining are successful.
Perfect. Thank you. David, how about yourself? What are your thoughts?
Well, I could go counter to Martha, but I wouldn't, because I go both ways on this. And maybe it's the fact that I talk to different accounting firms all over the country every day. I don't think anyone's going to go to an all remote workforce, but you have to start to think about a couple of things that I've been talking to with firms. If you're going to bring people back to the office, is your office set up to accept people? A lot of offices went to the open structure with desks facing each other. They got to change that. They got to be 6 feet apart. And I'm hearing offices say that they're going to bring people back. Some people are going to come back. Some people are going to stay home. But I think what Martha's saying, I agree with. I think you're going to see more and more people do hoteling. They'll come in sometimes and they'll go out. Culture is going to change. I've been a remote worker for over 30 years. And I've fit into the culture of the company because I do make my occasional office visit. I see more and more people doing Zoom conferencing, Microsoft Teams, Google, etc. And you're going to see a lot more of that going forward. As far as training is concerned, I was scheduled to go. My life is going from one conference to another. And what I see happening, I see more and more virtual training sessions coming in. There's a lot of good platforms out there. You really got to understand which ones to use. But you got to have the networking conference where partners, managers, and senior staff can network and build relationships. That's not going to go away. But I think training is going to change to more and more virtual conferences. One group, one large, I guess it's one of the largest associations, they had more people on their virtual conference about 3 weeks ago than they've ever had attend in person. And I listened to the partners talking, saying the cost to bring all these people to the conference now is much more minimized, but we still want to have face-to-face conferences. So I think staffing, change in culture, it's all going to continue. But I think people are going to start to say, we're using technology. We can be more and more virtual. I don't know if anyone else besides me is old enough to remember the Jetson TV show.
Yeah.
You know, when nobody thought they'd be video conferencing or flying around, personal Ubers, etc., in the sky, drones delivering packages. We're all getting ready for a different day. And people who were born in the last 10 years are all digital. And they do things differently and they accept things. So I see a lot of changes happening with staffing, team composition, and remote work. I'll turn it over, I guess, to Bridget now so she can add her comments.
Great. Yeah. And, you know, and I think that the common theme that you're going to hear from most people is that, as with everything in accounting, the answer is it's going to be, it depends. So when I think about what the permanent structural changes need to be for our firm and for a number of my clients, I actually have to go back to the service lines. You know, we're only 40 people, so we don't have the luxury of saying that we divide into silos and there's remote remote accounting team or a bookkeeping team or an assurance team. We need our staff to come in and out of different departments within our firm. And without clearly defining who you are, I don't think we'll get really good answers to whether or not you can work remotely, you can engage with your clients remotely. I run the not-for-profit audit division, and you can't be an auditor and do a desk audit. You can't get the evidence that we need to get by sitting behind your computer. It's getting better, but you still, I'll always be an advocate of having to be some level of in-person for audit work. And it's the complete opposite of setting up and being an advisor for a client for accounting and all things kind of CFO consulting through online platforms. So I really look through and I say, I think without defining who you are as a firm and what services you're going to offer, these are going to be hard decisions, and I don't think that there's going to be a one answer fits all. I always look through to this new compilation engagement standard that's coming out next year, and the compilation it starts out by saying, are you a bookkeeper or are you providing a report? Are you providing a compilation report or a review engagement report or an auditor's report? And I think until firms clearly understand which path either the whole firm or the various divisions of the firm sit in, these are going to be really hard answers, because you're going to pick a middle of the line that doesn't work well for either of the divisions, unless you're large enough to silo.
One comment I'd like to add back that you're saying, I would say most CPA firms, the bulk of the business is audit or tax money. But as you're saying, Bridget, you're defining clear lines. You're doing a lot more consulting. I think advisory services is going to take over as we move forward. But what I'm seeing, and this is from my college teaching, I'm seeing financial accounting being supported a lot with blockchain and real-time audits, but I'm seeing managerial accounting, real-time action decisions taking over, and that's where I see the advisory service coming in. People want the financial statements if they need to be audited, but more and more people want real-time managerial accounting decisions. How can I improve my business? What do I do now? So I see that switching. I don't know how both of you feel on the panel, Martha or Bridget, about managerial accounting coming of age here.
I'm nodding my head in complete agreement with you. and it is a necessary shift, because it is what our clients are looking for. And it's been amazing to see the technology that has been brought forward that was previously only available to large companies. And now, because we have this technology available to small and medium-sized enterprises, we can start to migrate into this space a lot easier than we ever have before. And that is where firms are heading towards.
I agree, and it's interesting. And as I kind of think about this, I'm putting on my auditor's hat now, because I do run the two very different divisions of the firm. And my auditor is knowing, and I'm knowing that economic crisis and significant declines in property values brings the need for assurance, brings third parties asking for assurance. So I think we face an environment where both sides, or all services that CPAs are actually trained and set up to deliver, I don't see a real shortage coming from any side. The amount of support we've had to give our clients to navigate all of these tax positions and changes and subsidies and the daily changes has been significant. There's been a significant increase in our requests for proposals for assurance engagements over the last few weeks. And there's this ever-growing requirement, as David said, to get into actually managerial support on the accounting side.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. So that actually went into another question I had, so that's perfect. I guess let's quickly talk about where things are going, and wanted to get the panel's thoughts on based on what you see right now, what are some of those critical changes that accountants and bookkeepers are going to have to make to face this new future effectively? And we'll start with you, Martha.
So the first one is to set yourself up to be able to deliver your services over cloud. And that's whether you're a bookkeeper or a CPA. What we've noticed from clients is those who had been shy or nervous about jumping onto a cloud platform are now asking for it and are knocking on the doors, as Bridget said, more ferociously than ever to access those types of services. And in order to survive, and not even just survive, but in order to thrive in this environment, you have to make that switch into cloud, and you have to make that switch into cloud for the long term, because that is the direction that the industry is going. We can look to other countries like Australia and New Zealand who have been in this space for a number of years, and the adoption rate amongst small to medium-sized businesses and accounting firms, large and small, significantly outstrips where we're at in the Canadian landscape. And so we can actually look to our peers down in Australasia for what Canada is going to look like, what North America is going to look like in order to provide those services going forward. Again, you've also got to have that consideration for that managerial style reporting, for the analytics reporting that our clients are demanding on a shorter term and real-time basis. And if you're not willing to adapt or able to adapt to that, I don't know how a firm is going to survive through that going forward, which is kind of dire, but it's a great time to make the shift. Yeah.
Thanks, Martha. David.
I agree. I think we're going to see a lot of changes between bookkeepers and accountants. I looked at the statistics for Canada, and there are over 210,000 members in Canada that hold the CPA designation, but there are 100,000 bookkeepers working in Canada, and most of Canada, from the statistics I got from the Canadian Statistics Group, are small businesses. So it's not about the audit, even though they need audits. It's about making decisions and real-time decisions quickly. I think the statistic I have is like 98% of the businesses in Canada are small businesses as defined by the Canadian Society. And these, I'm seeing the change for people who are not CPAs. I think it's a great opportunity for bookkeepers who don't have their CPA designation, who know as much as most CPAs, except with the audit process, that they can hold themselves out as business coach, business catalyst to help the business, or management consulting. There's a lot of opportunity in accounting now for coming up with a niche, but it's open to anyone except on the audit side, which is owned by the CPA market. So a lot of changes.
Bridget.
Yeah, when I kind of think back and I look to see where the struggles are and what my key assets are, it's my students. And whether it's my CPA students or my non-designated staff members who want to continue to learn and grow, I just think that there really has to be a fundamental change. These students come out of the universities and they're coming out of the CPA program with very, very little training based in an online market or with the tools that are available. We're a bit of an archaic profession. The majority of the clients that I work with are doing the same thing I did 30 years ago in the firm I started at, with pretty much the only advancement being that they scan the paper and then shred it instead of put the paper in a file. And so that catalyst has to change. And I really think it starts with the students. I struggle to convince my students that going into, I don't want to call it my QBO division, but this advisory division of the firm it's been kind of defined as being that's where the people who can't do audit go. That's just bookkeeping. Anybody could do that. That's not worthy of a university education or a professional designation. And so just changing the stigma, again, back to the service line, who we are, what we do, what we provide, and the value provided to the clients, and then getting the training caught up to what the new CPA offers. And the new CPA doesn't just offer a balance sheet and an income statement that's information that's 15 months old and a tax compliant return. So I really believe that it starts on the student side and convincing them of the future of the CPA profession and the accounting profession in general.
This is David. David, I 100% agree with that. It's kind of interesting. I'm teaching a first-year accounting class right now as opposed to the managerial course. And they come in and they're seeing debits and credits and they're totally bored and they think it's all financial numbers. And then I show them a computer program. Actually, it's QuickBooks Online because it goes with the textbook, nothing that I have control over. And I show them how everything flows automatically, and I try to impress upon them that the future of the accounting profession is all about advisory services, and that's why people are coming to them to help them make decisions. And again, I used to be an auditor when I first started, but it's all about, to me, client accounting and advisory services. I don't call it client accounting services. I call it CAAS, client accounting and advisory services. And it turns the people on when they see that the computer does everything automatically and they take over and they do the analytical work on top of that. So I definitely agree with what you're saying, Bridget, on that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what you've said, Bridget, too, and that it does need to start with our students and maybe looking at the Canadian education that we're getting out of universities and colleges and even in CPA and making those changes happen right then and there. But to add on to what you said, yes, it is our students, but I also think about our managers who are going to be the next set of partners in an organization as well, in a CPA firm. And they're ill-equipped right now because they didn't grow up with this technology or even learn this technology. So a lot of them can't review the work that our staff are preparing at this time either. And so how do we get them to be equipped to be comfortable in this space and navigate in that space? And I think this is one of the challenges that I still struggle with. But, 5 years down the line in 2025, when they're all partners, it's going to be an expectation that you have to know what the capabilities of this is and be able to provide that small A advisory in the managerial reporting side of things.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. So that discussion was fantastic, and what I really liked from that was discussing the change of mindset for folks. And in particular, I want to dive a little bit more into that. How do you see effectively changing the mindset of staff or clients who are resistant to technology, to new technology rather? And how do you replace that fear of uncertainty with confidence to get them to embrace and flourish? Start with you, David. Martha, sorry, start with you.
You can start with David this time. It's okay.
I'll be glad. I'll be glad.
Go for it, David.
It's the pandemic itself is changing people's mindset. Clients who are using desktop tools couldn't communicate with their accountant. The accountant couldn't communicate with them. And where the accountants have been spending time saying, we need to change our processes. We need to make life more efficient for you. You need to use a point-of-sale computer. You need to be able to accept Venmo for payments. And they'd say, what's Venmo across the board? Or you have to use a payment program. The clients saw through this pandemic that things are changing, and they got to change their mindsets to survive. Even with stores that were closed, and again, I live in Florida, and we're open back up. but stores changed their model from a restaurant to delivery. Actually, I just read some reports that Domino's and Papa John's profits for the last 2 months soared right off the table because they were in a delivery mode. So people changing their model to deliver, even the Ship-its and the Instacarts popping up, new businesses. They see the model has to change. And the big brick and mortar stores are now changing their delivery model. So clients are saying, yes, CPA, accountant, bookkeeper, help me be more efficient. Help me change my mindset. Tell me what's going to work for me. I have one client that's a summer beach club on Long Island. And they got all their members to sign up in January. And what's happened now? They're just finding out that they're allowed to be open, but the restaurant that they have can't be open, but they can do takeout. So we discussed changing the model, putting benches and tables all along the beach, which is private to them, so they never have to worry about being overflowed. So that'll get the members to come and they won't cancel. So I think the clients are seeing, hey, advisor, help me do that. I like to put the distinguisher between an auditor really is not supposed to give advisory services. But when you do the audit, you learn a lot about what's going on with the client. With the change to cloud and getting accounting information almost instantaneously, you can do that data analytics that you used to do as an auditor and do the advisory services and still deliver an audit after the fact. So I think clients are accepting the fact that, hey, I have to change what I'm doing now if I'm going to stay in business in the future. And now I'll turn it back to Martha.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, because it's not just the accounting industry that has had to pivot in this way. It is our client base. It is the small businesses across Canada. And, you bring up a great example of a restaurant industry where they have to pivot into these online services. And how do they still provide that to the general public? They don't have people walking in front of their stores like they used to. So now they're advertising on social media that you can still get a Bellini and pick it up and blend it at home. And I think the key here is adaptation, and adapting to the environment that we're going to be in. And so when we think about clients who may still have wanted to drop off their bank statements physically to their bookkeeper, just a few months ago, now they're going, hey, yes, I want to sign up for that bank feed because I can't drop off that bank statement anymore. And so this has just forced the shift to happen, probably a lot earlier than we would see it en masse. And it's been amazing to see that type of demand that's changed. And if we're able to respond and provide that advisory services of how those small businesses can pivot in this time, we become an invaluable relationship for that client on a go-forward basis.
Bridget.
I think it's interesting, right? Because everybody is changing and having to adapt and having to think about new ways to do a lot of different things. And there's been some really creative solutions that are really inspirational. And hopefully those stories start getting out into the press, as well as all the negative stories. But, I kind of reflect back on the firm, and the firm decided that we were going to go into this new, generational change and progress into our online services and our advisory. And to be quite honest, our clients were our anchor. We brought some of them fighting and screaming, and the time it took to convert them into online platforms, it was excessive, and we suffered some pretty significant time losses. And at that point in time, it was really critical, because as a partnership, we started talking about, well, if this isn't productive or isn't moving forward, let's just do what we've always done, because we've proven it for decades that this is how you do accounting. So we've really kind of changed our thought process and said our clients don't have to buy in to the online platform and the online access, but we're still going to put them there, of course, with the appropriate permissions and sign-offs. But we're going to put them there. And so I really kind of am looking at this online environment from inside the firm first, before we really start pushing it out into our clients. So the majority of my time in this is about getting the firm structures automated, getting the administrative time down in the firms, getting all of my clients into the cloud with the permission, but not necessarily having them use it or benefit from it. So I think there's a lot of different stages. And then we also, of course, have the clients that, like, this is where they live and breathe, and we're able to service them very quickly. But it leads to 3 and 4 different pockets in the firm. And so it's a hard transition, but well worth it.
I think by doing it in the firm first and proving it to the people that you work with probably was very significant in making it work for your firm, getting the workflows down and the process. You know, I'll make a comment. I've been using this one a lot. It's from Dan Burris, who's a futurist, very well known. He says, post-pandemic success will be determined by what you do now, not what you do post-pandemic. So now's the time to do all this to be successful. And Martha used my favorite word that I hear on every conference call I go on now, pivot. We have to pivot and keep changing until we get it right.
It's like Ross carrying up his couch on Friends. Pivot, pivot. I hear it all the time.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. So one theme that has come up quite often in the discussion has been advisory. And in particular, I want to dive a little bit more into how you see the advisory landscape changing over the next 2 to 5 years, what's going to become more popular, and how can somebody new to this type of work get started? So I think we'll switch it around a bit, and we'll start with you, Bridget.
Okay, so I guess, how to get started. If I was going to start out in this field, I would not go find clients. I would go find a firm that wasn't doing it, and I would do it for their clients. And that firm would feed you work all day and all night. So that's where I would start if I was getting into this field brand new. And I can tell you honestly that a lot of the days of the week dealing with really tough audit issues and, accounting framework issues, that I kind of wonder why I didn't start in just this advisory service field from the get-go, in regards to the ability to sell the value add is so easy because it's immediate improvements and recoveries within that operation rather than really fighting with the compliance type work, for lack of a better word. We find that all of our clients want the same thing. They want a highly trained, highly skilled, with 10, 15 plus years experience, CFO type person that can help them make significant business changes. Unfortunately, they want it for about $20,000 a year. And this person brings significantly more value into that corporation, but it's just not large enough to support $120,000, $150,000 salary. For what this role brings. So the part-time CFO, I think is a huge market. And then they, just somebody to make sure that they can log on at any point in time and their accounting data is relatively correct. Doesn't have to be perfect, but at any point in time, they have real-time access. So I think that there's like an internal accountant advisory role that's in huge demand and need right now. And then there's the part-time CFO, controller, decision maker. That's the two pieces of the advisory that we're trying to fill, because we have to staff these completely opposite, and we have to train them in much different mechanisms.
Thank you. Martha, let's hear your thoughts.
I'm glad that you said in 2 to 5 years, and not today, because there are firms that are leading the way, like Grant Thornton, like Clearline, who are already in this space and providing this type of service. And so I think that firms who are already set up to do this are going to continue to thrive and grab a significant market share while the rest of the industry plays catch up to it. In 2 to 5 years, I believe we're going to see two different types of advisory services, specifically when it comes to cloud and some of the abilities that it's going to yield us in that small A advisory space. The first one is what we've been talking about, which is the managerial style reporting, CFO services, part-time, and to that effect. But the other one is going to be on the application advisory service side as well. And in order to even get into this space, you have to have a foundational level of knowledge of cloud accounting and how these applications work and talk with each other and how they're going to benefit whatever industry you're targeting or whatever client you're going to work with. It could be an implementation of Shopify and integrating that into a QBO GL platform or any other type of add-on application. And without having that foundational knowledge of what QBO does, how it works, and how the data can move from one application to another, you're not going to get into that advisory application or application advisory space. And that is going to be of great value to our clients when they're looking to set up their businesses, which we're going to see more and more in the e-commerce space or on digital platform spaces. And so absolutely 2 to 5 years from now, those are the types of advisory services we're going to continue to see and continue to grow. I want to hear David's thoughts on this too.
I agree with what both of you saying. I just see, again, I look at things as a solo practitioner, as opposed to coming from 45, 65 person firm or a Grant Thornton size. And I see plenty of opportunity for me to go out there and do advisory services for clients, because I'm always talking to people. And when they ask what you can do for me, I don't say what I can do for them. I ask them questions. What's going on with their business? What do they need help with? And that's really where the advisory services starts, when you start to ask the client, what's keeping them at night? What would they like to do better? And you ask them how they do their services now. And it's really neat for a solo practitioner. I can only get into one of the two niches. Firms of your size can be a niche specialist in 10 to 15 different industries. So you really get good at knowing the applications and the tools to use, whether it's a Shopify, whether it's a Pluto, or something along those lines that benefits the client, that eliminates the work that they have to do. But I do agree with you. Some of it's an application side for setting someone up, but on the end side, it's a dashboard of accounting information, like Bridget said, and it doesn't have to be right. My favorite thing to tell my clients is go look at the business snapshot in QBO, or I send it to them automatically, where they see their AP, their AR, what money is owed, because it's all about cash flow, and then they can click it on the other diagrams to look at. But it's really about what's owed, what they owe, and what's owed to them. So I agree with everything you're saying. Next 2 to 5 years, plus in the next 2 to 5 years, we don't know what AI, machine learning, what's going to happen out there. Even with blockchain now, it's finally starting to reach a point where accounting firms are saying, I better look a little bit more at blockchain for non-financial transactions right now, and then I'll learn about it for the financial transaction. There's a lot going on that we don't know what's going to happen. Back to you, Bogdan.
Thank you. So we're at the 2-minute mark. So I just want to end off with one more question for the group. A lot of our audience today is in the bookkeeping side of the business. And I just wanted to get everybody's quick thoughts on where they see the bookkeeping industry shifting in the next 2 to 5 years. And what are we going to expect to see for folks in that period of time? And we'll start with Bridget.
I don't know. I think you stumped me a little bit with that one. I think on the bookkeeping side, it's going to be this, this automation, as Martha was talking about, this understanding of the apps and the synchronizing of the apps to get everything working. So what I do know about the bookkeeping side right now is in Vancouver anyway, and in my opinion, nobody's filling the hole very well. Nobody's filling that gap for that need, for that very, competent, well-trained, online, app knowledgeable individual who's really pushing for automation. And every time I'm talking, especially on my side, in regards to my internal team at the firm, every time they do something manually, I have the same thing, and they know as soon as it comes out of their mouth, they know what I'm going to say. Why are you doing it manually? I opened up one of my QBO files that a staff member had been doing, and it clearly demonstrates the level of training needed on the bookkeeping side. I had 100 journal entries in a QBO file. And so there's this disconnect. Like, there should be no journal entries in the QBO file, or kind of my minimum, my 5 year-end adjustments that I need. So just that training, that need, but it is in serious demand right now. And I've worked with hundreds of firms over the last couple of years, and I would say that every single one of them has work for a skilled, online trained bookkeeper to be there getting jobs as a consultant.
Could not agree with what you've said more. And I don't believe it's just relevant to the Vancouver market. It's what we see in the Canadian market, and those who are in the competent and can be online bookkeeping space, they're completely full, and they have no capacity to take on more work because they are great in that space. And we're also seeing bookkeepers of the past who were great on desktop versions, now retiring out of the industry as well. The way that I view bookkeeping at this point is, and it may be a pessimistic view, but is that it becomes a bit of a means to the end, and that end being the advisory services. And I don't think that those advisory services are limited to CPA firms. They're also applicable to bookkeepers who have built their practice in that space. And there's incredible value that bookkeepers can give to their clients because they are seeing those day-to-day transactions, and they're seeing that real-time information. So if bookkeepers are also able to pivot and make that change and become very competent and capable in the cloud accounting space, they are going to have work for days, and won't know what to do with it. But then, of course, we also go back to that foundational knowledge and the training component. And again, this is where we have to get schools, universities, colleges on board with educating those students who are going to be coming into this space to be competent and capable to be able to do that, not just for CPA firms, but also for bookkeeping firms as well.
Thanks, Barbara. David, final thoughts?
Well, I agree with both of the ladies. I think bookkeeping and accounting are not ever going to go away. It's just that the choices we make going forward will be more advisory. I think more and more of the bookkeepers will become application specialists implementing software for their clients. Accountants do the same thing. Mm-hmm. But it's more about becoming, as both Bridget and Martha said, we have to become advisors. So if I'm a bookkeeper, I might be a business coach, I might be a business advisor. Let me help you set up your business. Let me help you get the information. And let me show you how to be more profitable. I like to say, as long as someone can show someone how to be more profitable, more liquid, and more solvent, you're giving advisory services to help that small business. And that's what people want. People want someone to help them so they can plan for the future. I'll turn it back to you. It's been a pleasure being on the panel. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. So that was wonderful. Great conversation. Really appreciate everybody's time. Just as a reminder for the audience members, this course does come with 1 hour of CPD, so you'll be receiving information about that. And seeing as this is the end, we're going to turn it over to the audience for any questions. Thank you.